Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's recorded webinar on high-performance teams are essential to concurrent product development success, brought to you by the Minnesota chapter of ASQ. I'm Heather Farber-Lau, your moderator for today, along with Gregory Byron Bogenschutz, who will help capture questions and address any technical issues you have for today's topic, presented by Robert Beachy. Before I begin, I quickly want to touch on a few housekeeping items. First, today's webinar is worth 1 RU, which you can self-report. For instruction on how to do so, information is posted on the recertification page of the MinASQ website. The link has been placed within the chat box instructions. Next, everyone should be on mute. So if you have a topic-related question, start by typing the word question in all caps in front of your question, and the presenter will address them as we go through the webinar. If you seem to have technical issues, please be sure to shut down all other applications like Outlook. For audio, after checking your volume, you may consider closing and restarting the webinar session using a different browser. If you do have an issue with your browser, no worries. Our session is recorded and everyone will receive a recording. Also, the presentation will be loaded onto our MinASQ website. Please allow for a few days for that coordination. Now, moving to our session. Concurrent product development and concurrent engineering are successful because of effective cross-functional teaming, a 60-year-old concept that is still evolving and changing with technology and global teaming. Concurrent product development is not just doing tasks in parallel, but focusing on project definition, cross-functional teaming, and constant refinement of the final product based on end-user requirements. Cross-functional teams are the key to accelerating innovation, reducing time to market, and delivery of the right product or service to the end user. This webinar will provide insight into how performance teams establish goals, objectives, and process or project management, define roles and responsibilities, and identify and deal with barriers to make concurrent product development and concurrent engineering successful while managing interpersonal relationships. We are delighted to provide you with this always timely topic and interesting speaker. Robert Beachy is the Chief Technology Officer at Axiom Marketing Insights and New Product Innovation that creates sales, profits, and successful new products. His professional experience started in R&D and engineering, moving into manufacturing, and then sales and marketing. His interests range from developing industry-leading sustainable fertilizers and to award-winning medical devices, teaching new product development and innovation while instructing and mentoring up-and-coming engineers and scientists. Please welcome Robert, who will be speaking to us on high-performance teams are essential to concurrent product development success. Take it away, Robert.
Okay, welcome. Well, today we're actually going to focus on what we call innovating at the speed of teams, the topic of the SCPD seminar coming up in June. And the thing is, we always know we can have the most sophisticated processes and computer-aided process control systems, but it's always the people that control the speed and the quality of the product or process you're working with. And it gets back to the basics. It starts with that simple upper-level decision about what's going on, but we always forget the simple one. Who is responsible for what, when, and how do we check with each other to make sure we're on time and on target? We all use Gantt charts, and we all use a bunch of different systems. But the simplicity is who's responsible for what, when, and how do we check with each other to make sure we're on time and target. And again, we can't negotiate this stuff. And the greatest challenge to a team is find the resources in both people's money. I know everybody has lots of people and lots of money and all the resources they need to get a job done. But in reality, we rely on the people that we work with, whether it's collaboration or teamwork. And, all work is a process. But it's hard to get involved in a lot of this thing without having clear and consistent direction, and then having a cost-effective way to ensure all aspects of the process are anticipated in advance. We talk about risk management and everything else. Experience always helps, but outlining the process and making sure everybody who's key to the success of the project is involved at the very front end. And the best process is to find all those requirements, especially as a team, but they also participate in the market research. I don't know how many of you people are in the product development process itself, but the most effective teams actually get to see that voice of the customer. whether it's sitting in on a qualitative session or examining and looking at all the research. They get to define all these different aspects of the project up front. And PDMA, everybody familiar with Product Development and Management Association. But their research proves that culture is key to innovation and successful new product development. And that key element of the success is the team, and defining that new product development or service at the beginning, but also as a team. So marketing knows they want something crunchy, but they have to have the technology people in the food group say what crunchy is. And it's very important that the entire team define every single aspect of the project. I just threw up on the screen. This is a new product definition sheet. A lot of major companies, my own from General Electric and also at Toro, use documents like this, which actually, what is the product? What's the customer, the market, the consumer need? And going all the way down through features and benefits, R&D, so you're communicating everything up front. Everything from packaging to legal to market size to attributes, size, weight, color, texture, selling price. Products that are similar in the marketplace are defined at the very, very beginning. And they develop and define every single process step. Because when we're talking about new product development teams, we're talking about clarifying relationships between the different functional areas and establishing those methods for monitoring progress and expediting development. Whenever you're in the system, again, who's responsible for what, when, and how do we check with each other to make sure we're on time and on target? The best place to start is really finding out why teams don't work. A lot of times in our teaming, we always forget the obvious. Why teams don't work. Mismatched needs, and also mismatched goals and objectives. How often is it the fact that people on your team have different responsibilities and roles, and are they really attached to your team? And they could be confused goals or cluttered objectives. What's priority on each one of these goals and objectives? The next one is unresolved roles. What is your role? Are you the team leader? Are you a participant? Are you the one in charge of technical or whatever it might be, or operations? And then bad decision making. And a lot of times we'll talk about decision making at the very end, but decision making is best done by leaders. Bad policies, stupid procedures. Of course, everybody has great procedures at their business. And then an anti-team culture. A lot of times you're a team of one. And there are a lot of people that do not believe in teams. And maybe you give them a computer and isolate them. But you've got to establish and understand all these roles and processes, goals and objectives at the very beginning. The next is insufficient feedback and information. How do you know when you're going fast enough or you're doing well? And that's the team leader role. Next is a kind of obvious one, ill-conceived reward system. The best reward in the system that we know of is people who are really dedicated, people who are project managers, manufacturing professionals, whatever. Usually their greatest reward is the achievement of accomplishing the task. Personality conflicts. You might have drivers, analyticals, people with different personal needs, and the way they interact is very critical. Understanding that up front and being able to communicate and understand their behavioral styles is essential to effective teaming. Bad leadership. Obviously, you can have too much consensus. You can have strong leaders without discussion. But leadership is critical to getting products done on time and on target. And blurry vision. Hey, where are we going? And also, how are we going to get there? Lack of team trust. You have to develop trust. And lack of team trust can also lead to, goals being missed, timing, all kinds of issues. And then unwillingness to change. A lot of people are, assuming they're going to be doing what they want for the rest of their lives. A lot of times we have to adapt to get projects done on time. And then the wrong tools. What are the right tools to be using? How are you managing time? How are you getting things done? How are you testing and developing products? But again, who's responsible for what, when, and how do we check with each other to ensure we're on time and target? Then creating consistent managing projects by breaking them down to short, mid, and long-term tasks. You're familiar with Agile and their philosophy. Everything is short-term. It's the same when we talk about concurrent product development and concurrent engineering. On this graph, you see on the left, obviously, is the old waterfall process. On the right, everybody says, oh, that's the Agile diagram. No, well, yeah, it is, but originally, that's the original diagram for concurrent engineering. always focused on short-term goals, reevaluating, looking, and making sure that they are on time and on target, but also fulfilling the needs of the end user. This is concurrent product development and an iterative process. It's combining the two. What you're seeing right here is, your traditional process really starts at discovery, but it also reminds you the direction or strategy. You have to understand your strategy if you're going to get where you're going eventually. But in this one, we see on the fast-tracking projects, it allows you to enter the process wherever you can meet the goals of that stage. So if you have a stage gate process or whatever your process might be, if you can maintain and get in and provide all the development roles, you go start in development. If all you're doing is changing color and you've already ordered packaging, you can start deployment. What it does ensures that you're going faster, but you're fulfilling all of your goals and requirements. And again, concurrent product development is an agile process. It's faster. We get faster products because we're focused on short-term goals, but we also, in the aspect of teaming, if we understand our team members, we also get satisfaction of not only personal development, but getting the project done on time. The team with the objective met, collaborative environment, new team formed, we're going in a constant circle. We create teams, we collaborate, and we adjust goals or achieve them. The teamwork is balance. It's all about balance. On the technical side, you have your goals and objectives, your roles and responsibilities, barrier identification, decision-making, feedback mechanisms. But there's the interpersonal side, which we often ignore, and that's the personal values, the personal issues, the personality difference, conflict resolution, and cultural differences. Obviously, in an international marketplace, we have a lot of different cultural differences, and we have to understand them to be effective team leaders and also team members. Now, characteristics of an effective team member are committed to goals. Number one, committed to the goals. 2, express interest in others. 3, confronts conflict immediately and does not let it simmer. 4, listens empathetically. You've got to listen, in other words, I don't know if you have any military training here on the phone, but to be able to give orders, you have to be able to take orders. You have to include others in decision-making. You have to value individual differences, critical. You have to contribute ideas freely. In other words, you have to have an open environment where you don't feel embarrassed, where you feel open and feel your ideas will be accepted and understood. And the good, effective team member provides feedback in both directions, up and down. And you celebrate your accomplishments, but you do it as a team. Let's talk about team clarity. When you have your goals and objectives, you're usually trying to get from one point to another. Bad teams have very vague goals and objectives. They're not well defined. Good teams are clear. We have clear goals and everything. But we're going to talk today about best teams. Everything is short-term, continuous high priority. Reprioritizing everything you have in the system. So you're constantly reprioritizing. If something is, not important anymore, take it off your list and focus on getting to the end. Again, responsibility. Real simple. Bad teams have confused roles and responsibility. Who's in charge? Who's doing what? We have 2 people doing 2 things, or one person doesn't want to do something. Good teams, they have a differentiation of roles which is very clear and outlined. But the best teams, the further identification of turf wars, hot potatoes, finding those things people don't want to do, making sure that we have clear roles and responsibilities, who's doing what, when, and how do we check with each other to make sure we're on time and on target. Barriers are even simpler. Bad teams just they ignore barriers. They just don't do them. They kind of walk around them, or they say, I can't go there. Good teams, they may do barrier identification. Best teams, they identify the barriers to people, processes, and structures and develop these contingency plans. They find their ways around barriers, and they usually do this up front. So if you have people that are blocking what you're doing, or they might not be totally outside of your control. It might be internal operations or whatever, or it could be suppliers. But they identify these, and they work with them to get around them. Next, infrastructure support. Bad teams ignore them. They don't care. Good teams deal with decision-making and problem-solving. But what we're talking about today is best teams. Informal feedback mechanisms, membership leadership, communication strategy. They're constantly finding out what's going on with people. They understand the different personality types, and they work with them to achieve their goals and make sure they're on time and target. Communication strategies are critical, and understanding how people like to be communicated with, what their behavior style is critical to having good infrastructure support. Decision-making styles are interesting. This is something very important. I think everybody here, you've got to find out what works with what you're doing. Consensus. All consensus does is make sure that everybody agrees with what you're going on. If you have all high-performance people, consensus can work. You have majority rule, the democracy of decision-making. The only trouble is if 5 of you really know what's going on and 10 of you don't, and they're making the decision, you're making bad decisions. Minority rule. Well, minority rule could just be the fact that one person has ranking over another, but there's only 1 or 2 of them. They might know what the right answer is, and they may not. Averaging. Now, these are the same people that when you go to them, take them to lunch, they have a calculator with them to make sure they're paying exactly what they should be paying. Expert opinion. It's nice when you have one person who's the expert. Usually in research development groups, the expert is the expert decision-making style because the expert probably already knows the answer. The research is actually fulfilling what he thought was his own axiom or proven theorem. Next is something we don't like to hear about a lot of times. It's the authority rule without discussion. This is somebody who says, okay, we're going to do this. I don't want to hear about it. The most powerful and the most successful decision-making style we've ever witnessed is authority rule with discussion. So you have a leader, and you discuss everything, but you have one person who's actually in charge of this, who makes the decision based upon discussion and working out with other people. Dr. Harvey Robbins, myself, and a lot of people in our company, and actually working with and Toro and GE and different people we've worked with, or 3M. Authority rule with discussion to us has been one of the most effective decision-making styles for success that we know of. Relationships. Bad teams ignore them. Good teams recognize the difference, but best teams, they value these differences, and they develop versatility plans. How many of you have ever taken any personality test to understand all the different personalities they are? The most important one to us has always been the aspect of drivers, analyticals, and then we have our amiables and our expressives. Everybody has a different personality type, and a lot of times your versatility is your ability to deal with all these different personalities and make them effective in what you're trying to accomplish. The number one problem here in most places is most people don't know how to do this. And how we do it is threefold. Number one, we usually have some kind of standardized test to find out. Well, give me an example. A director is somebody who is a driver. They're driving and they're also emoting. They're telling. They're not asking. And so with a driver type, you want to be brief, be to the point, and be gone. Across from them, on the more the asking side, but also on the strong side, is analyticals. These are usually your engineering types, people that dot your I's and cross your T's and keep you on time and on target. These people just want the facts. They don't want to talk about anything else, just the facts and the history of how things are going. So again, you're going to be brief with them, but you're going to be focused on details and not people. Amiables, these are the people persons. They're also the ones who ask, but they're also on the emotional side. The first thing you talk about when you go into an amiable is, hey, how's the family doing? Or how is this decision going to affect the team? And that is what is critical to them. So the key there is understanding how it affects different people. Myself and a lot of my friends are all expressives. We're all the visionaries. We're the idea people. We're probably as stable as Jell-O, but we want to know where we're going and how we're going to get there is not that important. We just want to know that you agree with the vision. And these different relationships are critical to your success. Understanding them and understanding and valuing how all these people work. The amiables are the ones that keep your team together. They're the ones, the rah-rah people, making sure everybody's okay, how you're feeling. The expressives, we're the visionaries. We're looking forward. We're always looking forward and trying to explain what this is going to do and the benefits of it. The drivers are the ones that get it done. They're driving hard and making sure things are done on time. They're the ones that who's responsible for what, where, and how do we check with each other to make sure we're on time and target. The analyticals are the ones that, again, dot our I's and cross our T's. They're the ones that keeps us from making problems or making mistakes. They're always looking to make sure everything is done perfectly and we're actually on target and on time. We went through this a little bit quickly, but I wanted to leave a ton of time for Q&A on this one. And so I wanted, looking at the different things, how many people understand all the different personalities? What's different, or what's your biggest problem when you're managing teams? I don't have that many people here. The other thing was, let's go back a couple slides. The reason I'm talking about team members and everything, the seventh rule under characteristics of effective team members, contributes idea freely. This gets back to your trust factor. And 8, provides feedback. And that's your management, but also the person above you and the person beside you. And it's very important to understand and get that feedback as much as possible. And 9, celebrates the accomplishments. If everybody has common goals and objectives, celebrating accomplishments does not become an issue. It usually becomes an event, like I survived Project X. But that's very, very important to understand. These 3 items, contributes idea freely, provides feedback, and celebrates accomplishments, are key aspects of the teaming that are really the interpersonal side of accomplishment. Backing up, if you're listening, you're probably getting all that information back. And the decision-making styles are so important to understanding it. And team clarity. If anybody's been out there and spending a lot of time for a long time, this whole thing of goals and objectives is critical. Short-term, continuously high priority. I don't know how many of you people do this constantly, but the best teams, we're out there all the time, even internal to Axiom. We're establishing short-term, continuously high priority goals because our end user is our customers. And so we're constantly reprioritizing things, whether it's video, whether it's research, whether it's product development. So we have short-term goals, so we're focused on, our eye is on the target all the time. And by establishing short-term goals, we're always doing something. We're always actually establishing that thing by making sure we're on time and target because we're always focused on short-term. And so the long-term stuff will take care of itself. The short-term becomes the long-term in the end. But constantly reprioritizing on short-term goals and objectives is key. Let me go back here. Well, here, maybe nobody knows what that one is. Try this one.
Robert, is this the time that you'd like to have questions from everyone?
Yeah, but I wanted to accelerate. Let me do one thing real quick. Sure. Let me open up something that might help create a question here. This is a little bit more involved in wow. Let's just go back. Hang on. Might take too long to get that one out. Hang on. Let's kill these other ones here. Can you see this on the screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. That's one I would normally use, but when I was getting in behavior style modeling, and make sure everybody understands this, the whole idea, I don't know if anybody has done the behavior style model, but control, emote, tell, and ask. On these 4 quadrants, the drivers are controlling and telling. Their action, their present pace. Expressives are intuition and future focused. Amiables are always the relationship, and they're the empathetic ones. And the analytical are the thinking and past. It's real critical that you define all these different personalities and understand them before you create any team. If you understand this, everything goes so much smoother because you're understanding how everybody reacts and acts and how to best communicate with them. In other words, the analyticals and expressives have battles because obviously the expressive and the analytical are trying to get things done at the same time. Analyticals need timelines, and when they need details from expressives, and the expressive needs the analytical to view the future with them, to contribute the vision. Expressives must be nailed down to deliverables and timelines. And when we get into this, I didn't mean to get into this today. This is critical. If you haven't done this, this is an exercise at General Electric and other companies I've worked at or worked with. We spend a lot of time on to understand this, because once you understand the best way to communicate with people, you're much more effective in getting your project done on time. And when you're innovating at the speed of teams, it's critical to understand all of these different issues. And since we didn't get a time to go through them, the driver needs to establish clear milestones and goals for the amiable, but it must learn time to spend a little bit of time in interaction with the amiables. Amiables need to establish and demonstrate a sense of urgency and commitment to the end goals, not just personalities. And goals and objectives must be first, always. And drivers need to work with expressives to nail down deliverables and freeze the design or the vision. And expressives need to focus on deliverables and milestones. The group leader, or whoever's putting together your team, needs to spend time doing this. I don't know if anybody there and is listening has gone through one of these sessions before. But to us, in the real world, this is probably the most powerful tool you can ever do to make an effective team that communicates well, and they can express ideas without feel of intimidation. And also the aspect of when you understand people better, all the different people skills become actually a positive for you rather than usually a negative. Let me go, hang on. I just want to go back to this one. No questions? It'd be fun to find out how many people out there actually establish short-term goals or prioritize their goals based upon, a lot of teams are not focused so much on the goals as they are on the long-term goals as they are the short-term goals. And understanding that, I think, is really critical. I don't know if anybody else has done that. And of all the different things that we've ever done, you can spend a whole day on this subject right here. And it's real simple. Decision-making styles. And consensus, majority rule, minority rule, averaging, expert, authority rule, discussion. But again, going back to decision-making styles, I don't know how many people out there live with one or the other of these, but it'd be interesting to find out which one you feel is the stronger or the most effective for your organization. Consensus style is how the Japanese lost the war. Once the strong leaders were gone, they had to decide among themselves, and obviously the weakest link in the chain was their limiting factor. In majority rule, it's not always everybody who knows what's going on, but it's the one person that has that most information, whether that be the expert or the leader. But in decision-making styles, authority rule of discussion for us has always been the strongest. And even though that might be the expert who uses discussion, it's very, very important to decide upon what your decision-making style is, but then also with a limit. You're going to have limitations on how these can be effective. Averaging is probably very much like consensus. An authority rule of discussion is dictatorship, and a lot of people don't function very well under that. Authority rule of discussion has always been the more powerful one. Okay, I got one thing back. Please send the people type slide with materials. I'll go ahead and do that. Typically, when you get into discussion, it lasts for about an hour and a half. I can add that to the presentation, and we can go through that. I mean, you can go through that at your leisure. Anything else?
If there are no other questions, we would like to thank Robert very much for providing this informative and interesting topic. And as a reminder, the webinar has been recorded and will be available within a few days along with the slides that Robert presented. So on behalf of the Minnesota chapter of ASQ, we would like to thank everyone for attending. And in departing, we would like to invite you to attend our next webinar titled Improve Your Hiring Success, Top 5 Dilemmas in Finding Employees, on Wednesday, June 8th at 12 p.m. Central Time Zone. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.